Welcome to everyone joining us today for the live event via Zoom, and to those watching the recording later. I'm Nyama Reed, your 2022 WLA President, and I'm honored to hold this position and to serve you and the libraries in the state. I've worked in libraries for 20 years and have often heard we've always done it that way as an answer to questions, which usually leads to resistance to changing anything. The last 2 years forced us to change things at home, work, and other areas in our lives. We had no choice, and it was often stressful and frustrating. But a takeaway from all of it is that we've learned how to change and hopefully found that some of it works better than how we've always done it before. That is true for WLA also. From learning how to do online conferences, to holding safe in-person conferences in the fall, to hiring a new executive director. 2022 will be a time for reflection and analysis for WLA as we look at how we've done things and how we can do things better. So much change can be exhausting, which makes it hard to take on new things. I want to thank you for taking on leadership roles with the Wisconsin Library Association, and thank you for showing up today. I look forward to working with all of you and with Laura, Tom, and Hannah to make 2022 an excellent year. Now I'll turn things over to our Executive Director, Laura Sauzer.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for your flexibility in helping us to pivot this event to a virtual meeting. Before I get started with the program, just a couple of housekeeping items. You entered the room muted, and if you could please stay muted for a while. You will have an opportunity to be in some breakout sessions as we go through the day, so you have the opportunity to chat with your peers, and we will have a few points during the program where you'll be able to open up your mic and talk to everybody. You can keep your camera on or turn it off. I know that the Fridays are a busy day in libraries, and if you need to step away to cover a desk or answer the phone, we are recording this session, so we'll be sending out the link next week. So if you miss something, you won't miss something because you'll be able to see the recording. So we will be doing some breakout rooms. Hopefully I set them up, so hopefully I did it correctly. And we also have, of course, the chat feature in Zoom. So as we go along today, if you have questions, Hannah will be monitoring the chat for us. And so we'll make sure to get your questions answered. So the purpose of today is really to give you an overview of WLA and help connect your role for next year with the overall organization. So understanding overall the organization, how it's structured, our initiatives for 2022, and the role that you can play in helping us achieve those initiatives. I'm also hoping that it's an opportunity, though we're not in person, that through the breakout rooms that you can build some connections with people working in similar roles, maybe in different types of libraries, so that this isn't the only conversation that you have with the leaders in WLA this year, that you build some relationships, that you have some connections you can call on throughout the year. We're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of being a leader with WLA, the kinds of things that we hope that you'll come away from at the end of the year, and some of the things that we expect of you as a leader and of the committees and the units that you are working with. We're going to have some time to talk about the annual conference. I know it seems like a long ways away. It's in November, but planning is already underway, and you're going to help a little with that, where we're going to do some brainstorming on some session ideas. And we'll talk a little bit about some upcoming events that we have happening with WLA over the next year. So we are going to move into our first breakout session. So in your breakout session, please share your name, your role with WLA, and then talk about, now that we're about mid-January, are you falling off your New Year's resolutions? So talk a little bit about what personal, professional resolutions you made this year and how you're doing so far. So we'll give you about 10 minutes to do that, and then we will come back. So Hannah, go ahead and go. Okay, all right, great. Well, hopefully you had a chance to get to know some of your fellow leaders in our breakout session. So some of this that I'm going to talk about this morning may be a repeat to those of you that have been involved with the organization for a while, but I think it's important to talk a little bit about the overall organization as you prepare for a year of working on a committee or a particular niche within the organization. I think it's helpful to understand that you're part of something bigger and understand how that works. So if you look at our mission, I think what I take away from it is that WLA exists to help you and your institution be successful. So we do that in a lot of ways, including giving you professional development opportunities like the leadership opportunity that you've taken on, through the programming that we offer. And then, of course, through your good work, you help support the organization. So when I was interviewing for this position, I was told that we were the oldest library association in the country. And I don't know if any of you have heard that as well. So I did a little research, and we're actually not. New York Library Association was formed in 1890, but we are one of the first and one of the oldest. And I think that says a lot about this state and our ancestors' commitment to library services. So we're one of the earliest. I think that's something to be proud of. We're a 501c6 organization. That's an association. A lot of associations are 501c6s, or I think they're called business leagues. And what that means is that we're able to do some lobbying activity. As you may know, we do have a contract lobbyist that works with us. And then we have a separate 501c3 entity that we work with, which is the WLA Foundation. We have 3 staff, Hannah, who you can see, who's doing some of the controls for us today, and Tom, who you'll hear from later, and myself. Hannah and Tom are both part-time staff. We work out of a remote office. We used to have a space in the building with the Southwest Library System. We're now working fully remote. And so, we communicate with each other regularly. Hannah and Tom, Tom is Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Hannah is Thursdays and Fridays, and a little bit on Wednesdays, some days, some weeks. And I'm full-time, but that should be seamless to all of you. We're able to do things with technology now that just because we don't have a physical space, we're still able to work with our members and provide services. We do have offsite storage at the DeForest Public Library. So that's us in a nutshell. This is a little bit about the makeup of the organization in terms of our memberships. As you can see, individuals take up the lion's share of our membership. And then we have some other membership categories that help make up the whole of that circle or that pie. We've been working hard over the last few months to get some more individual trustee members. And as you can see, that part of the pie has grown a bit. We also have student members. We have library or library-related organizations. We have what are called life members, which are members that have been part of the organization for, I believe it's over 25 years. We also have a dual membership. For those of you that are members of WMTA, we have a dual membership program with them. So if you're not already taking advantage of that, please do so. But that just kind of gives you an idea of kind of what our membership looks like. I just saw a survey from the American Library Association. They did a survey of all of the state association, and we are, of our memberships, we are in the top 10 of the 37 state associations that were part of that survey. And we're in the top 6 of numbers of individual members. So number 1 is Virginia, followed by Texas, Michigan, and some of the East Coast library associations. So we're right up there. So we're one of the oldest and one of the biggest. And then I'm going to turn it over to Tom, who is going to talk a little bit about our revenues. So Tom, if you want to unmute yourself. Did we lose Tom?
Now good?
Yep, now we can hear you. Great.
First
Thanks,
time I
Tom.
clicked it, it must have been a false positive click.
Go ahead.
Anyway, before I hit the pie charts here that we're going to talk about just briefly, I'll just explain kind of what you're going to come to me for during the course of your leadership, or not necessarily as a leader or as a member as well. But being the financial manager, obviously everything you'd contact me for would probably be something financial or budget related, in that general area. Like bill payments for projects you're involved in, which most of our projects right now are in the form of conferences or like the support staff one-day workshop or legislative day. If you're involved in any of those in an organizational role and you need to get a bill paid, and how do you submit it to me, and how does it get paid? If you have any of those questions, obviously contact me. Obviously, with both Hannah and I being part-time, we kind of all jack of all trades. We all kick in as a team and try to do everything that we all do to fill in, just to get better response time to you folks and to our membership as a whole. So anything involving membership and registration, you could, if you can't get a hold of Hannah, you can talk to me as well. Obviously, the payment part is something I can take care of for you too. If you have question on how to pay something, or can you pay it a certain way, call me for that. I talked earlier about budgeting. We'll talk about that a little later, and some slides down the way here. But that'll be something you would refer to me on as well. Yep, and I think, as far as anything else, just regarding the association, if you can't get a hold of Laura or Hannah and kind of need something answered quickly, I can do my best at any time on all the rest of the, that doesn't fall into my bucket necessarily, but because I've been here 28 years, I hopefully can answer a good chunk of questions that you might throw at me. But so anyway, we thought we'd show you these. We got two different pies, and I did two this year because of the oddities of the pandemic of COVID, and now just coming out of it for our first year, kind of out of the beginning of it, and hopefully what we would call the worst of it. So 2019 obviously was our last full normal year. So I wanted to show that because this kind of is typical of a typical year in revenue. And I think it's important for you guys as leaders and as members. I think all our membership should be aware of how we receive our money, and how important it is to keep these numbers up, obviously, to be able to operate and to be able to fulfill our goals, missions, initiatives, and all of the above type of stuff. So this first one, 2019, you can see that our conference revenue is over 50%. I mean, over the last couple decades, we have been kind of split down the middle between membership and conference. Conferences in the recent years leading up to 2019 kind of edged over 50%. Couple reasons for that. I'm thinking it's now 5 years or more where our board of that year had voted through a new policy to increase the non-member rates for conferences to 90% more than the member rate. And hopefully that's, it would be an impetus for members to join, because we'd much rather have members, although we enjoy the extra revenue of non-members coming to conference. We'd rather have you as a member to get involved and to help keep things rolling and getting even better as we move along. So, so conferences we're at 55%. Obviously, dues is the next biggest thing. We have had some drops since the 2008 recession that we're slowly building back for. And I think Laura's got a strong suit in membership recruitment and in these areas. So we're hoping that along with you folks, that we can all put our heads and hearts and minds together to keep new members coming in and get those numbers to higher heights. And maybe we can go from number 6 to number 1. So I don't know if you get a trophy for that, but we can always make one. And then we have some smaller things, the investments. We have reserves that we built up over the years, and obviously it's prudent to be able to maximize earnings out of that to help us with our mission, goals, initiatives, and so on as well. And then the amount of money that the foundation pays us for administration, more or less our staff is more or less a de facto staff of the foundation as well by agreement. And they pay us what is now $18,000 a year for staff administration of anything and everything that goes on foundation. So if we go to the next slide, Laura.
Okay. Nope.
So this is what our COVID year looked like. Boom, conference revenue. That small part is because we did try a first time virtual conference. We felt really good about the number that attended, but you can see that the revenue stream isn't quite like it was for on-sites. We did go virtual in 2021 with the spring conferences, which were wildly successful. So 21 was actually a much bigger piece in that year. But as far as the COVID year, you can see how it affected us here. Obviously, the WLA Foundation stayed the same, and we did get the yellow part you see there is COVID assistance that we received from the government. We initially, Laura talked about our 501c6 status. At the onset of the pandemic, that actually hurt us because of politics. Kind of an interesting side story is the 501c6 were denied participation in the PPP program. If any of you are familiar with that, that was a COVID paycheck protection program for businesses that lost a certain percent of their revenue. It started out to be 25 or 70 or 25%. Then it went up to 50%. You could apply for these funds. Well, they excluded the C6s because both sides of the political spectrum said, well, like the Republicans are saying, we don't want C6s involved because Planned Parenthood is, and the Democrats are saying, well, that's fine with us because the NRA is a C6. So, well, they forgot that there's a bunch of good natured C6s around the country like us, and that really hurt because we couldn't get PPP funds. So we were able to take advantage of the employee retention tax credit. We did get a loan to help with cash flow through the Small Business Administration. That's a disaster recovery loan. So we are going to keep that in the funds to help with cash flow on the ups and downs as we muddle our way out of the pandemic. So and then we did qualify for a small chunk of PPP money in the second round. We had enough legislators, and I think ASAE, the American Society Association execs, was huge in getting that legislation put in for the second round of PPP. So we got some PPP money on the second round. So so that's a revenue picture. And of course, if you have any question, well, one thing I do want to point out too is I think it's always important to mention to the leaders, especially that when we do budgeting and so forth, a lot of people think of not-for-profits and say, oh, we're not supposed to make money. Well, that's the furthest thing from the truth. Not-for-profits are, a designation for tax purposes because of the good we do. We are set up not to have to pay income taxes and so on. But you need to make income as a not-for-profit. You have to have a positive bottom line to do your mission, to do our work. And to have a staff and be able to run conferences and communications and any networking things for you folks and everything. So it's important as a not-for-profit that you work to always have positive bottom lines, and you need to build reserves as well to ensure your security and longevity in this world. I don't think we would have made it 130 plus years if we didn't have profits and built those reserves to have investment income to help us in the dark years as well. So that being said, we can, if there's any questions, I'd love to have them, but if everything seemed clear as mud, that's great too.
Any questions for Tom? You can put them in the chat. Otherwise, well said, Tom. Thank you. And we'll move on. So these are the leaders of the board of directors for 2022. We had our first official meeting yesterday, and we have a very strong, engaged group of people leading this organization. If you haven't met these folks, I encourage you to reach out to them. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Nyama, who's going to talk a little bit about her story in becoming a leader with WLA.
Thank you. So as this shows, what a leadership position offers to you is opportunities for professional development, the joy and satisfaction of serving the organization and helping it flourish, making connections and building relationships. So I moved here. I was not a native to Wisconsin. I moved here from Michigan 11 years ago now, and started becoming active in WLA in 2013, starting small with a GovDocs roundtable that has now become a SIG, and then Wiggler, which was actually genealogy and local history. We did some programs. At one point, we did Desiree's. I did Desiree's family tree. Someone else did Plumers, and we presented that at the conference and talked about it. All the way up to being a director on RAS and OSRT, WAPL, moving up finally to the board and now as president. And over that decade that I've been here, as an extrovert, one, I like to connect with people, and it was hard initially going to conferences and not having anyone to talk to. And now I go and I have friends, people, oh, it's great to see you. But also when I have a question, who can I reach out to? And I know people, I've gotten more comfortable. I don't look at it as networking. Some people think of that as, too businessy for us. It's about building relationships. So when you have a question about how do you run Storytime, or how have you been doing hybrid programming during this? How is it working for you? You can reach out and talk to each other so you're not alone. Even being within Metro Milwaukee, you can feel alone, much less I know for people, maybe you're up in the northern part and there isn't another library close by and you don't have as much of a chance to get out to a conference or to the meetings via the WLA, whether you're in RAS or YSS, that gives you your people that you can reach out to that help you learn how to do this job, or someone to call up. So if you need to vent about something that's gone on, that happens too. So those relationships have been pivotal to me as I've been here the last decade. And then I try to give that back into WLA to make it.
Thank you, Nyama. So as you can see, there's lots of benefits to leadership positions within the organization. And I just wanted to point out on the previous slide with our board of directors, I was making some changes to that slide this morning, and I inadvertently deleted someone's name, someone who's very important to the organization, and that is Desiree Bongers, who is our secretary and has probably one of the hardest jobs on the board because she has to take the minutes. And I don't know about you, but I hate taking minutes, and she always does it in a very prompt fashion. And so thank you, Desiree, and I apologize for leaving you off of that slide. So next, let's talk a little bit about, so we know a little bit about the benefits of being involved with WLA as a leader. So let's talk a little bit about what the organization asks of you. So, we really ask that you be an active participant. Make sure that you are scheduling regular meetings with your committees or your divisions. You're paying attention to what's happening with the organization overall, reading our newsletters, reading the emails that come out from Hannah, reading the WLA bulletin that comes out every 2 weeks, and making sure that the people that you're working with are also informed about things happening with the organization. Keep WLA in the loop on your committee's activities. This is something that I really want us to work on this year, especially with me being new and still trying to navigate all of the complexities of this organization. It is part of our bylaws that you are to share your meeting minutes and other important committee updates with both the board president and myself. So please make a habit of just copying us on your emails when you send out your meeting minutes, or if there's a committee update that's not the mundane stuff, but if there's something really important, please keep us informed of that, particularly if you have any changes in your committee structure, if someone leaves and someone replaces them, those sorts of things. And then help us as an organization stay on the right course. And what I mean by that, we are instituting some new policies for 2022. And they're things that we've already been doing, but we're just adding some, maybe a formality around them or some structure around them. And that is that the board recently approved 3 policies that we're going to ask for you as a chair and your committee members to sign. There's a conflict of interest policy, there's a code of conduct policy, and there's a confidentiality policy. Those are going to be sent to you as a follow-up next week. And what we ask is that you sign them, send them back to the office, and have your committee members sign them and send them back to the office so that we know that everybody's on the same page. That's just going to help the organization in the long run, make sure that we're protecting ourselves and doing things in the correct way. The other handout I'm going to be sending you as a follow-up is just a 1-page document. I pulled some things from the bylaws that you may not know about responsibilities of being part of a unit or a committee that we ask you to do. And so just it'll help you, if nothing else, as you're struggling with figuring out what do we do with my committee this year, how do we get started? Maybe going through the list of things that we ask you to do might be a good way to kind of organize yourself, and you can kind of move through that list as the year goes on. So at the end of today, we will have time to open up the mics and ask questions. So if you have questions about that, we'll address it. I know there was a question for Tom in the chat about the financial stuff. We'll be coming back with Tom in here in a minute, and I'll share that with him then. So let's turn it over to Hannah, who's going to tell you a little bit about all the ways that the WLA office can help you be successful this year.
Hey everybody, a lot of this for many of you is already going to be familiar. So if you have questions or if you want me to cover something in a little more detail, let me know or send me an email. But what WLA or what I can do for you are these 4 major bullet points. So anything that you have questions about related to your membership, the membership of those in your committees or units, or anyone on your staff, you can email or call me. I can help you pay your memberships or your renewals, take forms, anything related to member clicks and payments of forms I can help you with. And that's that goes along with signing up for conferences or events like Library Legislative Day, which is in a few weeks, and today is the deadline. So if you have not signed up, you should sign up today before 5 to be there with us at the Capitol. For emailing the membership or your units, you can send an email to the WLA e-lists, and these are listed in the leadership manual, which is on the website, and you will all get a link to this after the meeting, which has tools and tips for your year as a leader that you can find in the manual. So I can authorize these broadcast emails to go through. If you send an email to your unit on a day that I'm not working, or a day that if it needs to go out that the same day and I'm not at the office, it might not go out that day. So just plan ahead when you send an email to the e-list so that I can get in there and approve it. And this is really just a formality to make sure that we are not over emailing our members, and that everything is linked correctly or spelled correctly and all of that. So if you have questions on why or why not an email that you sent through is not going through, it's likely because I have not had the chance to approve it from member clicks. And then for scheduling unit meetings, so we use GoToMeetings the majority of the time. That's our WLA platform. So I can help you schedule those and send you the links to access the meetings that you can then send along to your committees or units. As a leader, you will get access to the GoToMeeting login and password so that you can start your own meetings. That's fairly new. We ask that you don't schedule GoToMeetings or edit any GoToMeetings with that login and password, that you only use it to start your meetings. And that we do that so that you can have meetings without a staff member needing to be present to start it. So there's no delays, all of that. And as I mentioned, the leadership manual on the website, we'll send you a link to this. We'll have more information on all of this, on how to use e-lists, on how to access the GoToMeeting platform and all of that. And then lastly, for Dropbox, for those, so this is where we collect all of your documents that you create throughout your year as a leader. So you should, this will be, again, in the leadership manual, there will be a login and password. And when you log into Dropbox, we ask that you just find your unit and populate the correct folder with your content. If you would rather just email me or Laura with your content and have us put it into the Dropbox, that's fine as well. We just need you to be, again, as Laura said, sending us your documents so that we can have them in our archive. And those are the major things.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, we'll turn it back over to Tom.
Okay, we're gonna,
1 second here, Tom.
no problem.
you
We're
go.
just gonna summarize the budget process. And one of the things you would be in touch with me about, obviously, is budget questions. And then you might, during the year or leading into your leadership year, come up with an idea that's going to cost money to either just do or to get started. Obviously, the board likes to see ideas that generate revenue so that, you know, those funds can go back into building the organization bigger, stronger, and do more things for the library communities all around Wisconsin as well. So what we do is every late September, we give incoming leaders, not just the leaders, but their unit, division, SIG, roundtable, whatever, an opportunity if they do have ideas that are going to require funds to get started, or simply to do and something that's going to fit into WLA's mission or goals, obviously is a requirement to ask for money. So late September, and this is I'm gonna change this to, I used to just send a mass email out with all the docs, but I think what I'm gonna do is ask Hannah this year, what we'll do this coming September prior to conference, I'll post all these documents that you're gonna see here, along with supporting documents that aren't in this slide presentation. But we'll post those on a link on the web, and then we'll send out a reminder email to the leaders and incoming leaders that, hey, if you have an idea and want to get it before the board, here's your chance. And we'll fill out these forms that I'll talk about here in a minute and submit it by, I'll have a deadline on there. It's usually right before conference, so the board can, so we can get the budget done before conference, the draft budget done, I should say, and present it to the board at the meeting that's held at the conference, so we can have a budget approved coming out of conference for the following year. So all that being said, this first document is just kind of like a cover letter you'll download, and it describes what's in the process, and how to fill everything out and what's included, more or less. So, and one thing I do stress on there, you know, if you don't, you know, if this stresses you out, you know, please don't let it, you know, if you have an idea, you can call me for help on ideas on, you know, what you need, how much you need to put in it, and maybe how to articulate it in as far as our goals. So I don't want anyone to stress over budgeting, but to be truthful, last 10 years, a lot of the units or divisions, other than our ones that have conferences, haven't submitted anything. So I urge you that, you know, to submit something to the board if you have a great idea that is going to benefit our membership. So because all these things are added benefits for our members, and a feather in WLA's cap if we're doing more things for our members. So if you have an idea, don't be afraid to come forward. So the next document is the actual request form. It used to be a couple pages, but last few years we narrowed it down to one, so it wouldn't be as daunting. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You know, it just asks what division you're representing, and obviously your name of the person submitting, what the project's all about. And if it is a revenue producer, we want to have you do a kind of a rough budget. We expect this amount of money to come in. This is what it's going to cost for us to do it. This is what we can bring back to WLA. If it happens to be an initiative that just costs money, just put in there what your idea is, how it's going to work, and how it reflects the WLA's missions and goals, and obviously the amount. So that's it on that document. And then this next one, we send this out to, or we'll put this out, and this actually helps Hannah out quite a bit. Every leader should put their title in there, and then all the members of their committee. So Hannah can have all that information correctly designated in the member click. So this is an immense help to us. So it's important that all the leaders take time to get that into Hannah as well. And then other documentation that's not in the slides here, I just send background financial information regarding all the units and SIGs and groups. So you can kind of see how the year has looked, what was approved by the previous year's board for budget for that year. So you can use those as guidelines too. So those will just be there as resources along in the link with these 3 documents that you've seen. Any questions?
So you can use the chat, or you can unmute yourself to ask Tom a question. And all of these documents will be sent out in a follow-up message next week, so you have them.
And did everyone see my response to Larry's question about the office, departure from the office, how it's affected our budget? If you didn't read the chat, our lease was set to go over a little over 30,000 this next year. So that's obviously an expense that won't occur. We still do have a lease with South Central. We're actually a subletter of South Central. So that runs through May. We did get the office all finally cleaned out down to the carpet this week. So and I got a video into a leasing agent, so it's actively going to go on the market. So hopefully we can get someone in there fast, because we'll roughly save. We did get a reduced rent during COVID from South Central. They went down as far as they felt they could go, which is about $2,000 a month. So the sooner we can get it sublet, the sooner we'll save $2,000 a month through May 31st. After May 31st, there's no obligation. So at worst, we'll be done with the expense then. But hopefully we can get someone in there in the next month with a leasing agent working on it for us. So it's for those of you who've seen it, and if you want to put the word out, it's roughly, I think, 750 square feet. We have 3 individual offices plus a pretty large reception area with big picture windows looking out at the beautiful landscape parking lot. And we have the kitchenette with a work table in the middle with cupboards all around, lots of storage space. In fact, vast storage space, and with a kitchenette with a microwave, refrigerator, and sink. So yeah, so that's my sales pitch for today on that. So we'll go back to is there any budget questions? I don't see any chats.
If you do have questions for Tom, he is going to leave us at the break. So now would be a good time if you have a question for Tom. Otherwise, when we open up for Q&A, if I can't answer your question, we can make sure that I reach out to Tom and we'll get back to you. Okay, so yes, again, if you know anybody that's looking for office space in a nice office park with great neighbors with the South Central system, they're great neighbors, let us know. We'd love to get that space filled soon. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being leaders. Look forward to meeting all of you that I haven't gotten to know yet.
All right, so those of you that attended the annual conference, some of this will be a repeat, But Nyama and I are going to talk a little bit about the board's 2022 initiatives and some of the things that we're going to be really focusing on. I think if you look at this list, there's nothing on here that's very unique. It's probably a list that can be carried over from year to year with WLA, things that we're always going to be working on. And I would suspect that most associations are working on these things as well. So first point, I'm going to turn over to Nyama to talk a little bit about what we're doing around member recruitment and retention.
Thank you, Laura. So previously I was the membership committee chair. So this is an issue close to my heart. And as WLA has shrunk a little bit with some different things that have happened with funding across the state in the last decade, it was harder for some libraries to pay for their staff to be members or their boards. And then during COVID, maybe budgets got tighter, whether you were paying for it yourself or your work was. So this year we're looking at how to retain the members we have, bring back some members that have lapsed, and then attract new members in all areas, public libraries, special libraries, and academic libraries, to make it worthwhile for everyone. So I believe we're right around 1,400 right now, and we're definitely going to be coming up with some new things. We're going back to looking at doing the Be a Member, Get a Member, which was a campaign for a couple years that lapsed a little bit during COVID, but where if you have a staff member or you refer someone and they join and they list you as the person who refers them, you get entered in a drawing for a prize. A couple times we gave gift cards or gift certificate towards a plane flight somewhere. So keep an eye out for that, and all the information is on the website. I'll turn it back to Laura to talk about generating non-dues revenue.
So this topic is something that is a really hot topic in the association world right now, because so many associations saw some dips in their conference revenues and in their member recruitment and retention throughout the pandemic. So for WLA, some specific things that I'm working on. I have a plan. I haven't shared it with the board yet, but I do have a plan for different levels of advertising that we can do, not only ads on our website, but in our newsletter, so that we can generate some additional revenue through some of those activities. We haven't done a lot with advertising in the past, and I think there's opportunity there. We're also always talking about, are there grants out there? We just had a conversation about, would WLA ever look at applying for a grant? We're working very hard to be strategic about some of the partnerships we have to see if they can lead to some additional revenue for WLA. If you have ideas, we are open to them, and I'd love to hear from you, because that's something that will always be an initiative within WLA, is looking for generating non-dues revenue. Enhanced program offerings is something that we're already starting to do. We started in December. We kind of piloted a webinar just to see, can we do it without it being really clunky, and will people come? And we did a great webinar with covering Wisconsin, and had a nice turnout for that. In January, we'll be hosting, later this month, we'll be hosting the National Network of Libraries of Medicine. We're going to talk about public libraries and healthy communities. We have about 35 people registered for that, so there's interest there. And I think that that's something that potentially could also lead into some non-dues revenue for us if we were to offer webinars. That's not unusual for organizations to offer a webinar and charge a little bit of money, especially if you have to pay a speaker. So that's something that we'll be exploring. One of our board members, Gina Ray, has a wonderful idea for some programming that we could potentially do with the City Clerks Association. For those of you that work in public libraries that struggle with that tension between the city clerk's office and your budget office, there might be some things that we can do around that. So we're working on that. So look for more of that, and probably more virtual focused content to come this year, some more touches around that. And back to you, Naya. I'm going to talk a little bit about advocacy.
Excellent. Thank you. So as you all know, you advocate at your local level for your library. Oftentimes things come up that might be a little bit beyond what you feel comfortable with. So WLA is there for you to reach out to if you're looking help with advocating locally. At the county level, sometimes things come up as far as cross-county payments. Our library is still relevant. The LD&L committee is there, and they help with coming up Library Legislative Day. If you haven't registered, today's the last day to register for that, where we go and talk to the legislators and thank them for supporting us. So when it comes time for the biannual budget, last year they approved more money for the systems, which then filters down to us at some level, depending on how each system does it. And a lot of that was work from LD&L, which is part of the WLA. Also, sometimes things will come up of why do you have this book or you don't have this book. LD&L and advocates within the WLA can go and talk with those legislators or give you talking points for talking with your local people, help you learn how to deal with that. So it comes in at many different levels. This year, we're looking at developing additional programming to help train library staff and boards for advocating in a proactive way, while also being prepared in case some of those contentious issues come to you and then you have to respond. A lot of us have dealt with that in the last year or two as things become more heated, and how to go about doing that instead of looking at how to avoid it, because that might not always happen, how to deal with it when it comes in, to be transparent and not react in fear, as sometimes happens. So WLA will be working on developing that programming, and the fall conference, which we'll be talking about later today, will have a lot on that also. So, and I'll turn it back over to Laura for expanded communications.
Sure. And I should remind everyone that if you are interested in attending Legislative Day, the registration ends today. Is that correct, Hannah? Yes. So if you're interested in that, when we get done today, jump to your computer and get registered for Legislative Day so you can help be part of our advocacy efforts. Expanded communications. So you've hopefully have enjoyed getting the WLA bulletin that we've been sending out every 2 weeks. I sure have a good time putting that together. But that's really meant to be a vehicle so that we're communicating with you more frequently. It's also meant to be a vehicle to share what other divisions and units are doing with the full memberships beyond just our quarterly newsletter. So please send me things to put in there, and I'm always looking for content. So please send it my way and I will put it in there. I know you all are doing great things, and I think everybody would benefit from hearing about those great things that you're doing. So please send that my way. And then I'll turn it back to Nyama for talk about strategic planning.
Some of you may have been through a strategic planning process at your workplace. If you haven't, it may come up someday. We just updated my library strategic plan last year. It's quite the process, and the WLA one is a little old. And so with Laura coming in on a lot of so many things resetting and reevaluating, it's a good time for us to tackle that again. We didn't want to quite tackle it this year because so much of this year is just keeping our feet under us, Laura coming up to speed. We're evaluating things, looking at how they've been doing, evaluating the bylaws, but then looking to do a formal strategic planning and visioning process, in particular next year. So for you with your groups, at some point, we'll be reaching out to you, seeing what works for you, but we're looking for WLA to be the go-to for libraries. When people think, oh, I have this question about what library resources are out there or partnering, that they think of us and come to us so we can answer it. We can come do programming. We can answer their questions about budgeting or cross-county payments, and really looking at, as we've all learned, if you have to do more with less, then what is your niche? What is it that you're going to do that's unique? And that's what we're figuring out for WLA the next couple of years. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Laura.
Okay. So now that you've had a chance to learn about WLA in the big picture, think a little bit about your role this year, your unit, your committee, and how can you help us achieve these and support these initiatives. So we're going to move into another breakout, Hannah, and we're going to give you about 10 minutes to talk amongst your group and be thinking about how you, your unit, your committee can help with WLA initiatives. Please appoint a recorder in your group to share your responses with me offline. And when we come back together, and point somebody to be your spokesperson, because we're going to call on each group. I'm going to take a few minutes to share some of the ideas that you had. So hopefully you appointed somebody to be your spokesperson. So we'll go to room 1. Do you want to have your spokesperson unmute themselves and share a couple of the ideas you talked about?
What if we don't remember what room we were even in?
I don't know what number I was.
Okay.
I know. What number?
Did you all appoint a spokesperson? Then let's just take, there's only 5 of you, so let's just take turns. So if one person wants to go ahead, go ahead.
I can go.
first.
Oh.
You, Jenny, you got it.
Okay. I was in room 6. I remember seeing that number. And so we have Nicole, who's a part of WAL. She is really interested in re-engaging academic librarians, especially since the terrain has changed so much within the pandemic. And Nicole would specifically like to focus on the librarians at tech colleges. Their size, their needs are different than larger academic university libraries. For myself, I am part of the Outreach Services Roundtable, which is kind of just trying to get up off the ground since it's been dormant for a number of years. And so the team I'm working with, we are planning to do quarterly virtual presentations about various outreach topics, trying to appeal to both public libraries and academic libraries. Our leadership team has 2 public librarians and 2 academic librarians, so we have a good balance of perspectives there. Barry, who is the WLA conference chair, is really interested in looking at how to reach the really small libraries that might not have the time or the money to send staff to different conferences. And so thinking about how to connect with them, possibly create more robust online tracks, expanding what's already been done with the WLA conference. That kind of expanded into more conversation, talking about how traveling, we also are thinking about climate change and our carbon footprints and how does that all kind of feed into more online content. And then also brought in how recorded sessions can then also be shared with non-professional staff so that they can participate in that training as well. Then Christina from the Intellectual Freedom SIG is also getting an organization or a section off of the ground and wants to, first of all, hear what the attending members really want to get out of it, but really build advocacy. And especially like when if libraries are facing challenges or questions, that WLA is a resource along with DPI, the CCBC is right up there with a resource that libraries will reach out to.
Wow, you had some great ideas. Thank you, Jenny. And thank you, Jenny's room. Who's next?
I'll do it for our group. So we had a really wide array of different groups represented. We did have Mark from Outreach Services that said the exact same thing that Jenny said pretty much, so I won't repeat that. From WAL, WAL really focusing on conference attendance and the conference that's coming up. Whistle, spreading the word about the resources that Whistle has and WLA can help provide along with the activities that they usually do because they do small WISPublib events and then continue to offer scholarships to conferences so we can get people who can't come for whatever reason, there's some challenges, able to come to conferences. The foundation, so new fundraising campaigns for the foundation and hopefully new scholarships being offered as well. And then I reported out that I am kind of going to be shepherding a new leadership development institute coming through. And so that will also help with members offerings and hopefully some more funds to the organization.
Great, thank you, Sherry. And who would like to go next?
I can go next for group 4. Our group had 3 board members in it. So each of us sort of talked about how it's our role to make sure we're asking good questions, having deep and rich conversations at that board level on every single bullet point that you presented. So it's our responsibility to keep that conversation going. We also have a YSS member, Linda, talked about how dedicated the YSS members are, that they are doers and people who are providing really good content and are good resources to one another. that she and her section can reach out to other sections and to kind of demonstrate that robust activity is not only added value to your membership, but is also added value to the association and the profession as a whole. Dave, who is one of the co-chairs of the WAPL conference, talked about inviting others in. So making sure that voices are heard at conference, that people are invited to participate, that ideas are shared, and that knowledge is being shared. David works for a system, and so that advocacy piece can happen there, teaching each other how to handle some of the larger systemic issues. So again, that knowledge sharing and idea sharing is going to help push that advocacy piece. And then Elizabeth, who is part of SCSS, obviously that's a section that has lots of non-librarians, but again, people who are the doers in our profession for sure. So really making sure that their voices are heard. They may not always be able to attend conferences or webinars, but making sure that that information is disseminated out to them. And so outreach to them, showing them the value of a membership in an association, and again, how their voices can be heard, it will again make our membership super strong.
Great, thank you, Rachel. And anyone else?
Hi, Laura, I can go.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Hi, I'm speaking out for, I think that was called the coolest room. Oh, it was group
Okay.
three,
Very
group
good.
three, that's what it was. So we talked about how from a systems level, you can just kind of discuss with the people that you are working with to kind of disseminate to the libraries in your system and to the boards and to the trustees, try and get them more involved and see what they want to get from WLA. And from the outreach services roundtable, just to kind of, as was mentioned already, to provide more educational opportunities as that gets off the ground. So I think that's a great idea. And then there was 3 board members in our group as well. And we talked about how we just want to kind of put the connective tissue together. So all these things that are happening in YSS, which is always very active, as Sherry mentioned, I believe, or to see what's happening with the special librarians or with WAL or WAPL is all under that one roof. So you're not just like, well, things are happening quarterly and that's it, which is not the case at all. You can actually just have a lot going on. So I hope that we can continue to draw that together, and the bulletin that you've created, Laura, is a really good start to that.
Thank you, Chris. And Chris gave me the idea for the bulletin, so he gets all the credit. And that does sound like
I didn't bring it up to get the credit. You get the credit, Laura.
Well, it does sound like you had a pretty cool room. Who's next?
I can go next.
Oh, go ahead, Taylor.
I'm sorry. My name's Taylor, and I'm from the Wapaka Area Public Library. I'm a YSS member, director at large, and our group had a good mix of different people from different groups. And we talked about a lot of the things that were already brought up with, but one of the ones that stuck out and that I wanted to make sure, basically looking towards the future and continuing to offer like hybrid programs so that even people from those smaller libraries who might not be able to spare a person to actually go would still have that opportunity, but even more so, and something that I hear a lot at my own library, which is the most beneficial part of going to the conference isn't actually at the conference, but it's always the car ride home when you're riding home with another staff member possibly, and you get to talk about it and kind of pick apart like, okay, this is all the information we gathered over the last 3 days that we've been going, so we never actually sat down and kind of broke it down. And how hard that is with a hybrid program, because it's kind of like once the conference ends, it ends, and like the conversation kind of stops for a lot of us. But finding ways for us to continue that conversation, even for those people who are online, and again, making sure their voices are heard while they're attending a conference is really, really helpful. And as we were talking, I thought about how cool it would be at a conference, how if you could have sort of like live streams for like chat streams for people who are online during your in-person conference, so that they were still having some sort of input that the people in that room could see. But yeah.
Thank you, Taylor. Anyone else? Gina, I think had her hand up. There you go.
Yeah, I did. And you guys have hit on a lot of things. We talked a little bit more in depth than anyone has mentioned about the path to becoming more active in a association that you've belonged to for years. And we talked about ticking the boxes when you sign up, but then perhaps not joining the email lists for those groups. We think there might be a clearer path to activity for members that, I mean, I've certainly experienced that. And maybe we can talk about that more as a board. And of course, this meeting is full of extroverts and people who are very comfortable leading. I think that librarianship is a profession, that does also contain a lot of introverts. And one person in our session said, leaning into virtual feels really good sometimes. And there's no shame in saying we'd like to make our virtual programming dynamic and inclusive and exciting. And there's no reason to say we're doing this just because COVID, maybe this is something that we do lean into and explore, being really good at. And I think that could expand our base beyond Wisconsin as well. We had a really good participation for WAPL last year when it was virtual, I think largely because our platform was so inclusive. And when you talk, Taylor, about having these conversations on the side during a real conference, a conference app like Whova could be used can be used effectively for people who are in attendance in person and those who are unable to attend in person. So that was interesting. I think that's all I have to add. Most of our stuff was covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Was there anybody else? No one else? Okay, so we're doing great on our agenda. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a 6, not a 5, but a 6-minute break. I always find that 5-minute breaks aren't quite enough. So 6 minutes. Join us back here if you want to maybe turn your camera off and mute yourself, and then join us back here in 6 minutes. We'll continue.
Everyone's back.
Oh, everyone's back. Okay, wonderful. Next, we're going to do some forward thinking, some future thinking, and talk a little bit about, there went my alarm, talk about the annual conference is coming up in November at Lake Geneva. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barry Mcknight, who is our conference chair. So go ahead, Barry.
Great, thank you, Laura. And now I'm gonna just jump in if I'm missing anything or you feel like you have something to kick in there. So yeah, I'm Barry Mcknight. I work at the La Crosse Public Library. I'm really excited to be the conference chair this year and to build on just what I thought was a fantastic conference this last fall. And the theme for 2022 is Rising to the Challenge. This graphic was created by one of my colleagues at La Crosse Public Library, Alicia Alexander. I think it's a really attractive logo. And it really, there's a lot of synergy to the things we were talking about today. And I've been very invigorated by some of the breakout sessions we've had. And I'm really excited that the intellectual freedom SIG is coming back. And some of these things we've talked about today are definitely going to be things we're going to be tackling in the conference. So if you could advance the slide there. There we go. So rising to the challenge. So obviously we've all faced a number of challenges these last couple of years. And those aren't going away. There's not going to be a return to normal. There's a new normal as we move into, well, not a post-pandemic world, but sort of a continuing pandemic world, I guess. So that challenges could mean a lot of things. And one of the things that I was excited to see WLA being more involved in is in meeting challenges that libraries may face based off of materials or programs or their policies. And I know some of the people on this call, that their libraries have faced some of these challenges, in particular this last year or two. Our library has as well. And one of the things I guess I would like to see the conference tackle is how to sort of prepare yourselves to meet those kinds of challenges. So that may be developing your policies or working with your board to make your board kind of more ready to defend your library or to be advocates for your library. And also, you know, just giving people the tools to deal with some of these things. This is not going to go away, as everybody acknowledges. And in fact, it's my personal belief that these kinds of challenges are going to increase over the next couple of years. I really do. But those challenges aren't just those kind of things. It's of course challenging how to engage with your communities under these different situations related to the pandemic. It may be challenges about your funding. It may be challenges about programming and how to reach folks. It may be all those kind of normal things that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And a second component to the conference theme is sort of storytelling. Who's going to tell your story? In many cases, the defense for some of these challenges, the actual challenges, are going to be narrative. I mean, librarians love data, but some of these challenges come out of emotions. And if you're going to rally the public or your patrons to help you, part of that's going to be shaping the narrative and how you frame these issues. So that touches on the advocacy, which is one of the things we've been talking about today. You want to advance the slide again, please, Laura? So 2022 is in Lake Geneva. I have never been to Lake Geneva. I'm very excited to go to Grand Geneva. It's just the images I found online. I was like, wow, it's going to be very exciting. So as some of you may know, Lake Geneva is also the birthplace of Dungeons and Dragons, which I'm a nerd. So that's really, that's the first thing I thought of when it was Lake Geneva. I was like, oh, I get to go. That's fantastic. And that game has obviously really gone through a resurgence in the last few years, and its acceptance and kind of played by all ages, and just some of the different issues it's tackled in terms of inclusivity and things like that. So that kind of idea about storytelling also is that sort of cooperative storytelling. And so I don't know how yet, we haven't met with the local arrangements, but we'd like that to sort of be kind of that idea of storytelling and that cooperative storytelling and gaming maybe to be one of the tracks we've been tackling. And then just like we had talked about in our breakout sessions, the idea is, we've talked, some of us have talked, talked with Laura about this and a few others. Everybody acknowledges that attending the conference physically may be a challenge for some of the smaller libraries in particular because of location or resources, and really maybe trying to build on the work that the WLA has done online to kind of expand those offerings in some capacities. So to have a really robust physical attendance for this conference, but also to maybe have an opportunity to have a robust virtual attendance as well. Naima, do you have anything you want to jump in there?
Just that I'm very excited to be doing it. It's a beautiful location, and it really came together as far as the theme, and then also, the gaming and the D&D connection. I think so many people, there's that overlap. So we're hoping we'll be able to offer lots of great programming, but also the evening fun activities to draw people in online and then also in person, and really looking forward to getting this going. If anyone attending wants to help with planning, we're pulling together the committee. And we have quite a few of the large positions, but there's still some more that need to be filled. Or if you want to just show up and say, this is my skill set, how can I help? Go ahead and email Barry or me, and we'll get you involved. So thanks, Barry.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. We do have some of the positions filled. We're still looking for people to help, and to not have all that weight be on just one person. So we'd be happy to have your involvement. So let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Well, now that we've gotten everybody excited about the annual conference, you're going to have the opportunity to talk in your small groups about some program ideas. We do ask the units and the divisions to come up with a program idea. That's part of our bylaws. So we are going to go back to our breakout rooms, Hannah, and we'll spend some time brainstorming, and then we'll come back together again and share some ideas. I do ask this time when you're recording your program ideas, make a list, appoint somebody to be your recorder, and make sure that both Barry and I get those ideas, so that these ideas that you're all jazzed about them, that they don't die on the vine, if there's something there that we can pursue. So we'll come back and we'll have a representative from your room, whatever room you're in, report out, and then we'll do some wrap up and we will be done for the day. So Hannah, if you want to go ahead and move everybody to a breakout room. Okay, I'll give everybody a chance to come back in. Oh, looks like we've got everybody. All right, so let's go back and I'm going to call on your spokesperson from each room. If you want to share a couple of the high points of the ideas that you had for the conference sessions. So room 1. If you want to unmute yourself and share. Or I guess if you don't know what room, just go ahead and go. Yeah, sorry.
I'll go. We had somebody from WAL talking about providing a program for organizing, how to delegate without losing your mind, and how to track ideas. We had somebody from Whistle talk about own voices. And then also another program about supporting your team's stories. We had somebody from OSRT talking about conversation cafes, like community conversations where you talk about hot topics, but it's a safe format, or you can have workshops. Also, the idea of having an event or something at WLA where it's an idea sharing session for members of SIGs. Another program idea was hiring, but also applying, so how to find jobs. And then another one was about boundaries for yourself. And then the last one was intrusive advising, so how to help students at risk, to help them with supporting life and college success skills.
Wow. Thank you, Angie. That's a great list. And just a reminder, as you made these great lists, please make sure that I get a copy and either I can share it with Barry or just share it with Barry directly, so that these ideas don't die on the vine. Who would like to go next?
I can. Our group, I don't know our number, but our group had some good ideas too. We had somebody from the nomination committee who thought it'd be nice to have some kind of I don't know, a presentation or a meetup or something to kind of tell about the nomination committee, the process, and also to help get people involved. And then we also let people know how they can get involved. And then kind of just some more in general. You've been in the conference, in the association for a while. How do you get involved? Because people still don't really, it can be hard to break in sometimes. So I don't know if it's a session on that or a meetup. We kind of like the meetup idea because it wasn't just one person standing up and talking, you could kind of share ideas, but, and then also there was an idea of a pre-conference guide. The Whistle section did that once in a newsletter, I guess, to kind of say, these are the sessions you might be interested in. And if you want to meet, have lunch, let's do this, kind of for help people who don't really know what to look for, I guess, and meet your people too. And then also tech services is going to, I think, put together a list of people to reach out to, an expert list, and maybe we can kind of set that into a conference somehow. WAL might be nice to see more academic focused sessions because some people can't go to both WAL and WLA. So some ideas there were trends in academic libraries or partnerships between academic and public libraries. And then also we'd like to see the virtual sessions included in the main conference for people who can't attend in person. And I think that was about it.
All right, great, thank you. Sarah, did you have your hand up before? Sarah Clement?
Yeah, sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting.
Oh, there you go.
So we have quite a few D&D enthusiasts in our group, so they were adamant that I wanted to put the idea of running a short game demo in addition to potentially having programming around how to start game programs in your library. We also talked about the idea of the people libraries. I think there's probably a more official title for that, where you have, people with unique experiences or backgrounds or expertise that you can check out. So something about how to implement such a program at your library, and or kind of using that concept as a way of doing some more structured networking at the conference and doing kind of like professional speed dating. So you get to meet maybe a wider cross section of people than you might self-select. Similarly, something about doing adult storytime programming. And that also might be something that the group would be interested in doing as a social event, having some kind of adult storytime or open mic storytelling session. And then one that was more sort of focused on public library administration is, in addition to having resources around when we have material challenges, having some resources around how to navigate and negotiate when you find yourself in contentious relationship with your municipal or county level officials.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Who would like to go next? Anyone else like to share?
Oh, yes, I can share. Sorry, I was typing. Our group talked about lots of things. In fact, it was entirely too short. We didn't have our poor person Elizabeth didn't even get a chance to talk because we were too busy talking. So I just want to say that first. So we talked about, of course, challenges in the sense of not just material challenges, but challenges to other things that people could take issue with at a library. And then having some people who have kind of been through the fire and are on the other side talking about what worked, what didn't, and how they're moving forward. We had Dave brought up the IDEA project, which sounds like it's aimed, a lot of their content is aimed at librarians and helping them talk about race and EDI and possibly having them be part of the conference. And also Dave, who is co-chair of WAPL, suggested that maybe we have a program that starts at WAPL and ends at WLA. So if we have part one of something that starts at WAPL, and then we could have part two happening at WLA. And then I think it was Rachel who talked about future visioning for libraries. Right now, I know a lot of us are just in survival mode, but moving out of that and into how libraries are going to evolve for the next 5 to 10 years, like what's coming down the pike, what should we be aware of, what should we be thinking about and talking about in our local levels so that it doesn't catch us flat-footed. And then also talking about, a lot of people got reassigned during the pandemic. A lot of library folks are off doing non-library things for their municipalities just to help out. And of course, a lot of those have kind of just now been lumped into library services. And then how do we manage all of those kind of like extra bits that we're doing in the midst of a pandemic, especially when a lot of us are understaffed and underfunded. So kind of talking about those challenges as well. Mm-hmm. That's what we had.
Thank you, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else like to share?
Yeah, I can go. We hit on some of the same themes that other folks did. So it's great to hear some other ideas related to that, like EDI. We do want intellectual freedom to be a good part of the conference. We did talk a lot about D&D, so that will be a part of it as well, including the idea that maybe that somehow was a fundraiser you know, and have some different sessions and things like that. So that's something to think about, that aspect of collaborative storytelling. You know, it really has I think there's a lot of dividends beyond just sort of being involved in, you know, fantasy and that kind of thing. We did talk a bit about, you know, some of the challenges of some of the meetings, both at time and for attendance. And we talked, and that kind of led into a discussion a bit about the Tuesday reception. And I haven't been to Grand Geneva, but I've been told by a number of you folks that it's a little bit removed from the community. So that maybe the reception is, you know, going to be instead of occurring offsite, would maybe be occurring at Grand Geneva, and maybe that would be an opportunity to also have it function as a meet and greet or speed dating for some of the sections and SIGs to kind of, you know, put names to faces and stuff like that.
Okay. Good. Anybody else have anything to share? I know that probably was a short amount of time, and I think Barry would agree that if you have a program idea that you want to pursue, by all means, put pen to paper and submit it when they put out that call for proposals. And there's already opportunity to submit proposals for the WAL conference. So when you come away from these things and you're jazzed with new ideas, you know, we have opportunities for you to pursue them. So there's not, go ahead.
I can jump in a little bit from our group. We focused a little bit on the intellectual freedom challenge piece of it, and talked a bit about using or calling in some of the, maybe utilizing some of the experts in our field. Some of you know Tom Lipinski, but we talked about somebody like that who really knows library law and might be willing to do a program. We also talked about bringing somebody in from ALA, Intellectual Freedom, and also talked about the historical context of book challenges and how, you know, libraries have been at this place in time before and have gotten through it. So sometimes it's good to see that. And then we also talked a bit about special librarians and how fun it is. We have all these great special librarians across the state of Wisconsin, and it would be really fun if we could, you know, focus on a special librarian that would fit well with the area and the programming. And we talked about the fact that, you know, where we'll be staying is an old Playboy resort, and Kelly knew a author who just wrote a book about that and speaking at the Waukesha Library. So we talked about sort of, you know, in putting the history of the area as well and how interesting that is for people. So, and if I missed anything from my group, somebody else can jump in too, but that's a lot of great ideas out there.
A lot of great ideas out there. Anybody else have anything they want to share? Just check the chat here. Someone suggested we should have our dice blessed at the next conference. Okay, so we're going to move right into, so we can continue with comments about the annual conference as well. This is just sort of an open mic section of the program where you can ask questions about things you learned about today. As we're talking and talking a lot about the idea of how do we stay connected virtually, I'm curious to know from this group, would there be value in bringing this group together again, maybe once or twice a year, to check in and share ideas? If you're stuck with something, that this can be sort of a good group for you to connect with, and you know, working across different parts of the organization and different types of libraries and different types of committees, but you might be able to help each other. So I don't know if that's of interest or not, but you know, we're all in different places around the state. We didn't meet in person today. Is there a way, would it be helpful to you if we were to try to connect you virtually a couple times a year, just for sort of an open discussion or brainstorming session about conferences, anything that's come up with your work? I offer that to you. We have the platforms that we can certainly easily set something up and facilitate for you. And it looks like there's a hand raised. Barry, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, Laura, I think that's a fantastic idea. You know, a lot of times, especially what's great about like this type of meeting is there's people from all different sections and different roles of leadership. And then we sort of scatter to our sort of divisions again. And I think I personally think it'd be great to meet once or twice over the course of the year to kind of just touch base and, continue the conversations. It's a good idea.
Good. Okay, well, we will commit to doing that for you. And then if, it'll be informal. If you can join us, great. If not, we can always record it and share information. But I really think one of the beautiful things about being part of an association are the connections that you make. And I don't want you to be only limited to the people that are working on your committee or because we don't see each other. So if there's an academic librarian that's doing something interesting that might parallel with something you're working on in your own library, by all means, let's get you together. And so, yeah, we can facilitate that. I think that might be a nice way to sort of engage all of you as leaders and you kind of give you that team behind you that can help you think through problems as well. So were there any questions that came up from the content that you saw today or others that maybe Nyama or myself, or we've got the other board members are with us as well, can answer? Tom did have to step away. So if you have something really technical, I may have to come back to you, but just go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. Looks like Jenny's got her hand raised. Jenny, you can go ahead and just unmute yourself.
Hi. So I have two things that I want to mention. First of all, earlier in the session, someone had mentioned that, when you're registering for or becoming a member and you're clicking off what subsections you'd like to be a part of, that doesn't automatically enroll or subscribe you to that mailing list. And Mark Boucher and I came across that last year when we were trying to get OSRT going again and realized I was on the team and I wasn't even subscribed to the messages.
Oh.
And so we talked to Hannah about turning that on for everyone who was enrolled in OSRT. And so I don't know if that could just be blanket across the board. If you, say that you want to be a part of YSS, you automatically, are added to theirs or OSRT or any of the others, because I had zero clue that that there was something out there that I was not a part of.
Right. Well, and if you're clicking on that, I guess it would be safe to assume that you're going to get the communications for that, right? Yeah. So
I would think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
But maybe it calls for a disclaimer,
yeah.
Maybe then it's like, I agree that I will, be automatically added to their subscriber
So this
list.
is probably a member clicks, the capacity of the member clicks question. Hannah, if you are able to answer that question.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and member clicks does not make it easy for us to do that. So as members, you automatically get all of our member emails. As in the e-lists themselves are a self-subscribe benefit. So I subscribe at the beginning of the month, depending on the month and how busy it was, people like new members to those lists. But it's not a perfect process since I'm pulling them by hand.
So maybe there's a way that we can promote signing yourself up for those lists more proactively so that it's not a manual process of the office having to identify who's put, we don't have to manually plug people in, that they can plug themselves in to those lists. But that's something I wasn't aware of that. So I appreciate you sharing that, Jenny, and we'll look into that because I think we need to make it easy for you to get connected. And it doesn't sound like that maybe that's a piece that we're doing very well right now. So we'll work on that.
Yeah, I think the WLA bulletins are fantastic. Like I know some wait, have I just not been always getting these? No. But it's really great to hear that update from you. And that's, if we're expecting that kind of communication, then it's that much easier to be like, hey, here's, some more information about, how to, subscribe to these other lists. The other thing I wanted to mention was, would it be reasonable to ask if you could, Laura, as you, would you be interested in meeting individually with each chair at the beginning of the year to hear about kind of the ideas and the framework for the year?
Of course, yes.
Okay, because I know that I would definitely like to meat with you, and then I'm like, well, maybe that would just be great for everyone
I started to work my way through the list when I started, and I got through the divisions, but some of that has changed now. Some of those players have changed. I didn't make my way down through the roundtables. I didn't get that
Okay.
far. So yes, absolutely. I want to do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And if you invite me to your library, I'll probably come.
You know what? You went to, I'm from Economowoc, and you showed up on a day that I happened to not be there.
Okay. Yes.
So that's a real bummer.
Yes, I will come. So,
all right.
And Jenny's point about communication, the other thing that I again would ask, that the bulletin is only as good as the content that I receive, because a lot of it I just sort of go out and find myself. So I find some of the stuff that seems weird, it's because I was like, well, I need something for fun. So share what your divisions are doing. You know, I want, of course, if you want to get targeted information, sign up to be part of that particular subdivision and get their communications. But I think all of us benefit if we know what everybody's working on. So within your individual silos, please share the communications and what you're working on with me so I can share that more broadly as well. So thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Laura.
Laura, I'm just going to jump in here in the chat. Claire mentioned the idea, we thought about offering super popular WLA sessions as webinars throughout the year, maybe with a small cost associated for non-members to view.
That's a great idea. And actually, we should do that with, even we could go back to this past conference. I know we have the attendance for, and that was something that we talked about. We have the attendance for all of the sessions. Those that were more popular might be ones that would lend themselves to a virtual session later. Yes. So thank you.
And even between us, Laura and I, or Laura with the board, have talked about creating sort of a knowledge base like others do, where we do those short recorded videos that people could view at any time when that topic comes up. And part of that is pulling from what were popular programs or what we hear from people. So it's nice to hear that, you know, you as other leaders are having similar ideas.
If you have other questions or comments, feel free to just unmute yourself. I think everybody's ready for lunch. Oops. All right, well, if there's, and this is not the last time that you can communicate with us. Obviously, if you think of a question later, please let me know. But I do want to take a minute and talk about some of our upcoming events. I've mentioned that we're kind of trying to reinvigorate the Intellectual Freedom Special Interest Group. So there is a meeting on the 24th at 11. There's more information about that on our website. Christina Gomez, who is on our board and is with us today, is going to be leading that meeting. So hopefully you will be able to attend. On the 27th, we again have Bobby Newman from the National Network of Libraries of Medicine talking about public libraries and healthier communities. It's an interesting program. I took it as a day-long workshop a couple of years ago, or 2-day-long workshop. I think she's kind of truncated it down to a webinar for us just to give us a taste, but it's about kind of looking to your community for information about where are the health disparities and how can the library maybe provide information. And you will come away, it's interactive, you will come away with some very specific ideas on how you can work with your community. So there's still time to register for that. Today is the last day, so there's not a lot of time to register for our library legislative day. So when we get done here today, if you want to register for that, run to your computer to sign up. We are working on scheduling appointments with legislators. It's looking like we have close to almost all of the representatives covered in terms of having groups from their constituents coming to the event. So that's good news. This morning we had 97 people signed up so far, which is not quite where we usually are, but we're coming out of the pandemic. We hope to be closer to well over 100 by the time registration closes today. The 20th through the 22nd is the WLA conference at the Sheraton in Brookfield, and the call for proposals for that is out now. So you don't have to work in an academic library to submit a proposal for that conference. So if you have an idea you think might be of interest to that audience, please share it. WAPL is coming up in May. I know that there is a committee together and they're meeting next week. So there'll be a call for session proposals for that event coming out soon. The 26th of May is the one-day conference for SSCS. I don't have a lot of details about that, but I know that they always have great attendance at that event. So looking forward to that this year. And then, of course, we've been talking about the WLA annual conference in November. But between time, I keep watching our website and reading our emails because we're going to have a lot of other things going on as well. Those are just the high points at this point. So please mark your calendar for those things. And if there's no other questions or comments, we're getting done nice and early. I don't think anyone's upset when we end early. There is my contact information. There's Nyama's information. I am delighted when people call me and want to meet with me. So please invite me to things at your library or we can meet virtually, but I'm always happy to make time to meet with you. So please, I'm still meeting people. I haven't met everybody yet, and that's my goal. So please extend an invitation to me. And I believe that Nyama would say the same thing. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, so we will be sending out the recording of today's event and a bunch of handouts for all of you. It will probably go out next Wednesday. We have some things we have to pull together in the meantime. The WLA office is closed on Monday, so if you try to get a hold of me, it won't be till Tuesday. So if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for giving your time to us this morning. It was great to see everybody's faces, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.